All right, we'll give everyone a moment to come in. There's quite a few people making their way in. How are you today, Eugene?
Oh, this is fun. Excited.
This is
Doing
your
well.
first Woo You, right?
This is my first Woo U. I was just lecturing in New York last week, and somebody was like, "Oh, I saw you on the Woo U announcement. I'm going to watch that one too." I was like, "Okay," and then 2 hours into one.
It's a good it well, if the person's here, hopefully they'll say something in the chat because this is going to be a big group. So I will get started. Welcome everyone to tonight's Woo You event, an AI playbook for driving revenue, excuse me, and optimizing your practice with Eugene Schatzman. I'm your host, Dr. Jennifer Stewart, and thank you to iCare Pro for exhibiting at tonight's event. So just some reminders for each hour of CE, attendees must be online for a minimum of 50 minutes. Sorry. For a COPE certificate, please fill out the survey link in the chat. The survey link will also appear when the webinar ends. CE certificates will be delivered by email and sent to ARBO with OE tracker numbers. We'll also display the QR code at the end of the event if you have the OE tracker app on your phone. CE certificates will be emailed within 4 weeks, and make sure you ask questions throughout the presentation using chat or Q&A. And I hear we're going to have some interactive discussion. Is that right, Eugene?
We are. So I'm a big fan of making sure that we have a chance to connect with the audience. So I also like
Perfect.
to make sure that nobody's asleep. So, and it's good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And there's where, if you're on your phone, there's how you can participate. And it's my pleasure to welcome Eugene Schatzman to Woo You. He's the managing partner at National Strategic, a practice growth firm that has partnered with more than 3,000 eye care practices nationwide to scale smarter and operate more efficiently. Known for translating data and digital strategy into measurable outcomes, he's seen firsthand how AI is emerging as the most powerful transformation tool in modern eye care, reshaping patient communication, marketing, and the very structure of practice operation. So, welcome to Woo You. I'm going to turn it over to you. When you have that engagement, do you want me to help with the chat and Q&A? Do you want to read it? I'm here. So,
Thanks, Jen. No, I'm good. I got my multiple monitors set up so I can see it, and
perfect.
I'll shout if I need your help with anything. But
Perfect.
welcome everyone. Excited to have you join us tonight. Just quickly, financial disclosures. As Jen said, I'm the managing partner of National Strategic Group, and all financial relationships have been mitigated. So my goal is to provide you with as much practical knowledge today as possible. And when I think about practical, I want to think about what's happening inside of your practice. So if you start thinking about that, let's start with something really common. And everybody gets phone calls in their office. And I suspect that if I polled the audience right now, I would have fewer than, there's, I don't know, 700 people on this, or six or 700 people on this on this training. I suspect that fewer than 20 of you would say, "Oh yeah, I listen to my calls every single week." But our organization actually has been generating calls, listening to calls, and we've listened to millions and millions of calls over the course of the last, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 years. And the reality is that we're constantly listening to calls that are coming into optometric offices, and we hear some pretty wild things. But I'm going to play a call for you that's, I would say, relatively typical. And I want to ask you the question to think about: how often does something like this happen in your practice, and how do you know?
Yes, I was wondering if you were taking new patients.
And may I ask your insurance, please?
I have Care First. I don't think it covers any eye.
So, unfortunately, we are out of the network for that insurance. So we advise to look for another provider.
We advise to look for another
None of them.
provider.
None of them. I don't even have eye insurance with this insurance company.
Yes,
So,
ma'am. Even for eye or medical, even cash basis or any other insurance, ma'am, we cannot take the Care First insurance,
I don't need to
even
use
it's a vision or
do you
medical.
guys do you take cash?
If you are having a Care First, ma'am, we cannot accommodate the holder or the even the cash basis.
So you can't take me as a patient if I want to pay cash?
Negative, ma'am.
Oh my God. It's just, I got to stop the pain here. I hope you all are, I could probably hear you or see you cringing if you were looking at me right now as you're listening to this call. And I assure you, this is a practice that's a client of ours, and they certainly take cash patients and would love to serve a cash patient. And this happens on the phone all the time. It's not quite necessarily that bad, but I will tell you that listening to millions of calls and hundreds of thousands of calls in the last year, what we know is that that's what happens when we answer a call. When we don't answer a call, that happens somewhere between 15 and 23%. And most recently, there's been a 53% increase in missed calls during business hours. That means that 1 out of 4 calls that comes into your office during business hours, if you're the average eye care practice in the United States, is not answered. And you think about that opportunity being flushed away. And by the way, when we do answer the calls, we actually track new patient opportunities as they come into the office, and listening to thousands and thousands and thousands of potential new patient calls. What we've learned is that we've gotten progressively worse as an industry at not just answering the calls, but scheduling new patients. In fact, in 2015, the running rate right now out of all the calls that we've analyzed is that only 15 out of 100 new patient opportunities end up on the schedule. So think about that for a moment and realize that we've got this massive problem where I'd call it the leaky bucket or the cash being set on fire before the patient even walks in the door. And how could you potentially solve that problem? Well, I'm going to play you something else. It's not perfect, but it's a different approach.
Hello, welcome to Seashore North Optics in Sand Lake. Would you like to book an eye exam?
Yes,
Are you a new or a returning patient?
I'm new.
Great, let me check the earliest available slots for you. We have openings tomorrow at 9 a.m., 9:15 a.m., and 9:30 a.m. Does one of these work for you?
I can do 9:30.
Perfect, I'll reserve the 9:30 a.m. slot for you. What's your first name?
Actually, I don't have insurance, so how much is it going to be?
Let me check that for you. This will just take a moment. Our exams include advanced technology to check not just your vision, but your overall eye health. So you're getting a lot more than a quick screening. A comprehensive exam is around $129. Would you like me to set up your exam for you?
Yeah,
Great. What's your first name?
it's Elizabeth.
Okay, so you're hearing,
So your first name is Elizabeth?
I'll stop the audio. What you're hearing is it's not perfect, but it's definitely a better experience than the one that was being delivered by the more expensive, inconsistent, and human agent who was not really answering the phone all the time. And by the way, this call ends in an interesting way.
Please hold on. I am booking it for you. Great, Elizabeth. Your appointment is confirmed for tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. You'll receive a text confirmation shortly with directions and parking. Please bring your current glasses and any contact lens boxes. We'll have your reimbursement paperwork ready and apply your eyewear discount. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Is there anyone else you would like to book an appointment for?
Is there anyone else you'd like to book an appointment for? And by the way, when asked, 1 out of 14 patients says absolutely. And 1 out of 7 can be convinced to do that as well. So that is, yeah, we can't hear you. But that is absolutely the case. And we think that, and this is where it's a good example of some of the things we're going to cover tonight, where AI objectively and subjectively provides a better patient experience. It's cheaper to operate that AI than to hire the human, the first example that we heard. And of course, there's a better conversion rate, which equals more revenue for your practice. And so this is the types of things we're going to cover tonight. When we think about the patient journey, in all reality, 2/3 of the patient's journey oftentimes happens outside of your practice. And if you think about that, from the moment the patient starts saying, oh, you know what, I can't really see out of my glasses, or maybe it's time to update my prescription, I'm going to start searching. 2/3 of that journey from the initial point to the follow-up happens outside of the practice. Now, there's a lot of really interesting clinical innovations that are going on now inside of practices for AI. We're not going to focus on that tonight. I do a different talk with co-presenter Dr. Scott Morris, where we cover that in depth. So I'm going to spend most of the time today on what happens before your patient even walks in the office, what opportunities you have to get more patients walking into the office, and then also, once a patient's walked into the office, how do you maximize the revenue, especially with great follow-up, great systems, and leveraging AI and technology? So I want you to think about this, and if we want to make this a little bit interactive, I'll ask you a little bit later, but I just want you to think about this question that's on the screen right now. What is the biggest issue in your practice today? And, if you think about what that looks like, again, you can be as specific for yourself or as broad. If you were to answer broadly, you might say staffing. Staffing is a problem. That's what most practices say. A lot of practices say demand generation. I have gaps on my schedule. A lot of practices talk about process or training or things like that. And the reality is that if you just focus on the top one or two problems as you're thinking about the answer to the question, keep that in the back of your mind, or if you have a piece of paper, jot it down. Because I'm going to ask you to think about, I'm going to present a lot of different tools in rapid fire. I'm going to ask you, do you think that some of these tools can solve that problem? And if they can, you should write it down, because then you'll get the most out of the next 40 minutes or so. So let's just jump in as to where we are now with AI. A lot of people say, well, we don't really use AI all that much, but the reality is we do. We use it all the time. If you drove anywhere today and used Google Maps, you definitely use AI. If you're a customer of any one of these companies, you're using AI on a regular basis. And the infrastructure is just growing. If you see all of this spending that's going into microchips, it's going into AI data centers, all of this is just infrastructure. They're building the roads so that you can get on the road and drive. And whatever you choose to drive, I mean, whether it's a golf cart or a Lamborghini, is really up to you. But that road is going to be there because the infrastructure is being built. And you see AI in the headlines all the time today. And what's interesting is if you think about where AI is, or where we are on the hype curve, and the hype curve is kind of like Gartner came up with this, I think, in the 90s to describe every major technology and how it follows basically the same path. There's this big, unbelievable hype. And this is from like the first technology, I think, like electricity. Think like, yes, somebody had to be sold on the fact that electricity was a good idea, or like electric lights, all the way to the advent of the computer and the internet. And now AI, what you're thinking is, okay, man, there's a lot of amazing things that SIS can do. And then there's this unbelievable hype, and then it like under delivers on those massive expectations. And then what happens is, it just becomes normal in society. And so where we are right now is we're sort of going through this trough of disillusionment. And that's where, if you're starting to adapt technology at this exact moment, you're one of the early adopters. If you kind of take this adoption curve and lay it over, the reality is that the early adopters are going to have the market advantage. So just simply being on this webinar tonight, the people who we have joining tonight, you're already one of the early adopters, because you have the opportunity to take action on some of these things and get ahead of the marketplace before this gets completely normalized. And instead of having it as a competitive advantage today, you might have to be adopting it as a must-have to catch up later. So as we think about AI, I just want to kind of propose this thesis, which is that it is related to that this is not the first time that our human relationship with information has changed. think back to 1996, where this company came to place, and you're like thinking, what the heck kind of CE did I sign up for tonight? Where this is the picture on the screen. Well, and this was actually the company's logo. And this was a company that had this audacious idea to catalog all of the websites on the internet by the number of backlinks that they had. That means the number of links pointing to those websites. And later on, they decided to rebrand that website into Google, as you know today, luckily. I'm not sure it would have been as much of a hit without the rebranding, but that is the first time that information went from inaccessible to accessible, right? It was harder, or the advantage became accessibility. So you went from having to use like a card catalog and paper resources to starting to be able to use digital resources just about anywhere. So that became accessible. Next thing that happened is, about 10 to 15 years later, we started having accessibility and convenience, because all of a sudden that accessibility became available in the palm of our hands. Now, if you think what happened at that point, it was like every human interaction started being fueled by the fact that we have the world's information in our pockets. Whether you're sitting at dinner and saying, oh yeah, that movie, I wonder, was that guy with the face, and all of a sudden you're having that conversation and the person was like, oh yeah, let me just look that up. Yeah, that was Brad Pitt and whatever. And or you're seriously starting to consider, which eye doctor do I want to go to? And think of what we did before we had this accessibility and convenience in the pocket of our hand, in our pocket, in the palm of our hand all the time. And when you think about this, this is a change in our consumer behavior, and it's also a change in our social behavior as well. And now, when we think about AI from the perspective of the consumer and from the perspective of us socially, we're kind of at a new inflection point, because AI is now transforming consumer behavior to be accessible, convenient, but then it also adds a layer of customization and efficiency, which means I can get that accessible and convenient information faster, and I can get it customized to me. So honestly, I have to think less, or I have to process less information in order to get the answer. So, and by the way, this is data from last year, 2024 data. ChatGPT just came out, and all of a sudden, people already say, oh, you know what? I actually don't mind working with a chatbot, for example. So 60% of people said, it kind of either depends on the situation, or I would highly prefer to talk to a chatbot rather than a human. And what's interesting is that 70% of people are left either somewhat satisfied, very satisfied, or neutral about that interaction, meaning that they either think it's the same as the human, or they prefer it over the human. And that's, chatbots. But what else is going on? Well, the first randomized clinical trial that proved that an AI-driven chatbot can reduce clinical level depression, anxiety, eating disorder symptoms. And these effects were truly statistically significant and clinically meaningful. The Wall Street Journal had an article a few weeks ago, or I guess this was right at the end of August, where they interviewed people on all the neat things that people were using AI for. And if you look at the items on the screen, like there's a lot of people who are early adopters who are using AI to do everything from build a new wardrobe to prepare healthier meals to redecorate a room. And this one's one of my favorites. I would have you all guess, but I think we want to make sure that you have, I guess having 800 people on the call tonight, I guess, you would want to wonder what's how many of you are in this position. But it turns out, I want to just ask think of what answer there is. Out of single adults in the United States, the singles population, what percentage of the singles population is currently dating an AI as a romantic partner? Just think about that for a moment. Just think. And I don't know if you would be surprised or not surprised to know that it's 16% of the singles population, 19% of men and 14% of women. And by the way, 78% of those people thought that the support and the relationship was the same or better than a human companion without many of the downsides. So hopefully you're all chuckling just a little bit right now. But what this means, if you really think about it, is that AI is already here. It's infiltrated our lives as people, as consumers, and pretty soon as eye care patients. And the reality is that we, as eye care practices, need to adapt, but yet it does feel kind of overwhelming, right? It is a little bit complex. It's a little bit risky to be the first mover on a number of initiatives. Sometimes it's like, well, I don't understand it, or somebody else didn't. Somebody else tried something and it was disappointing, as we talked about that curve of the adoption curve. And it's one of those things where you have a lot of worries and you don't know exactly what the cost is going to be. And if you're in the category of any of those things on the screen resonate with you, you're certainly not alone. I do these talks all over the country, and I hear this all the time where folks just, and it is not easy to make meaningful change in your practice, but the truth is that the change is already here. It's already happening. And so change towards AI is really inevitable. And you just have to decide, are you going to be on the earlier side or are you going to be playing catch up? So now that hopefully I've given you a convincing argument as to why you should adopt some AI tools coming out of tonight's talk, just some. I'm not going to ask you to adopt all of them, but just some AI tools that can hopefully solve that problem that you wrote down, or at least get you 10%, 20%, 30% closer to solving that problem. Let's talk about what's going on with AI and get you into the practical tools. So first thing first, we're going to talk about what happens before a patient arrives in your office and some key parts of the patient journey. So in 2025, patients are still searching the internet to find doctors. Now, but the difference is that more and more of those searches are going to a variety of chatbots. Those chatbots are adapting and adopting their algorithms every single day. But Google still gets searched 16.4 billion times per day. What's interesting is that because it has massive market share, we should absolutely pay attention to it. And so when patients are searching for your practice, what used to come up in the search results looked like this, right? You got the ads, you got the snack pack, which is still the most valuable real estate on the internet. You got your rich snippets and you got your organic listings. This is not new, right? This is what the search results used to look like. But now you got this AI knowledge source up at the top. And that AI knowledge source, if you think about not looking for a local business, if you type in something like, hey, my remote isn't working, what can I do to fix it? And here's a picture of it, or I guess you could type in here's my laptop such and such won't turn on. The reality is it will give you a very reliable, most of the time, answer that is step by step. And you think about what your experience was before this knowledge panel. Your experience was you had to search for a problem, usually you had to kind of guess how the internet was going to. So I would say remote such and such user manual or something like that, or laptop such and such won't turn on, user manual, and then see if there's any. And I have to click on one page, and then I have to skim that page, and then click the back button and click on the next one. Oh, the travesty, right? And so today, this AI knowledge source, I know we've all seen it, provides relatively reliable AI-based answers in many cases where I don't have to click on anything, I just have to look at it. Now, in the case of optometry, there's a search I just did a few weeks ago. Interestingly enough, if you look at this, I assume that this is an optometrist type of population. I'm pretty sure you won't all be very happy about this particular AI output. The problem is, again, consumers are being trained to trust this thing. So, this isn't the best thing. Now, companies like ours are advocating and helping Google refine its algorithm. So hopefully it's not a long-term problem. And by the way, when I saw who's the best eye doctor in Cleveland, Ohio, and I saw a bunch of MDs, and I was like, okay, well, maybe I should just ask who's the best optometrist in Cleveland, Ohio. And the answer was, well, there's no single best optometrist. The ideal choice depends on your individual needs and preferences, ... So The truth is, this algorithm is learning. It's not perfect, and but there are ways to make sure that you leverage the current state of this algorithm to your advantage. I'm going to show you an example of one practice that has done it well. This is, when you think about silly searches that people can type into here, I have dry eye. How can I fix it? Here's one example. What do you do if you have dry eye in Allendale, Michigan? Well, it turns out that Allendale, Michigan, all of the search results are dominated, especially all the AI search results are dominated by one guy, one practice, a doctor named Nick Lilly. I've had him on the show, and he has the way that he dominates these search results is actually leveraging a tool, which is his videos. So he thinks it's fun, but he produces video after video after video. These are not super long videos. They're a few minutes long, and he just loves producing video. But you know why Google prioritizes those videos? The AI algorithm prioritizes that content because it's authentic, reliable content. In other words, it's Google is saying, or Gemini in this case, which is powering the AI result for Google, is saying, that's probably the most reliable answer on the internet for that particular set of keywords because I'm pretty sure a human wrote it, not an AI. Think of how ridiculous that is. But it's true and it's working now. And just if you're wondering how it's working, for him, this is after he started publishing videos. That was the next few weeks of what happened from his snack pack profile at a 19% increase in calls, 19% increase in website clicks, and 2,700 search impressions. So if you're looking for video ideas, this is the slide, the screenshot. I'm happy to provide it later as well. But this is, if you're thinking, man, I really don't have time to record videos, it's only a couple minutes. It's a great way to stand out. It's a great way to educate your patients before they walk in. And it's also a great way to educate the algorithm, which will then place you in the AI results above everything else. And if you don't know what to make videos about, I've got some ideas on the screen. Here are a few more ideas. And the thing is, if you need help making a video, guess what? Just ask AI. My prompt would be, and I'm looking right now at the screen. I'd like to make a video about eye strain versus something more serious, how to tell the difference. Hey, and that's my prompt. Ask me 5 questions, one question at a time, is to help me produce a script that is 3 minutes or less, so I can make this video educating my patients. That would be my prompt. And then the AI, whichever one you choose, you can have Gemini, you could have ChatGPT, you could have Claude, whichever you prefer. But AI would then ask you the questions, and then it would produce a script, and it would be customized to you. And then you could just read the script on video, putting your phone right in front of your laptop and record that video. So hopefully I've convinced you that this is one good way to leverage AI to your advantage. One thing that's not quite AI, but I just can't give a lecture without adding instant value to practices. If you own a practice, please search your practice and see if you have this blue book online button on your practice. What we've found is that this book online button generates a bonus 10 to 20 appointments for practices. And the way it does it is by simply reducing friction. It doesn't need to have a special scheduler. It literally can go to any scheduler, but simply adding this book online button, which has just recently become available to optometry, just recently. It's been available for other industries for a while, but Google's had some HIPAA concerns and whatever, but it literally just arrived in optometry a few months ago, and I really encourage you to make sure that you get this book online button added to your Google business profiles. If you have it, we're finding up to 21% more engagement with your profile without you having to spend any more dollars on marketing. Okay, so this is patients finding you before they ever hit your website. But what if they click the button to hit your website? Well, now it turns out that if you ever want to make your website instantly reflective of what's going on in your practice, new tools exist to allow you to build and modify key parts of your website instantly with prompts. So, for example, you can add a prompt to AI optometry websites about how you've been in business for 25 years, talk about how you care for patients, whatever. And you add that, and all of a sudden, your website your website gets more content. If you have a dry eye section on your website and you want to add a prompt that says something like, we just added an IPL to the list of treatments. Please update our website with a laser by such and such manufacturer that has both IPL and RF. Explain the benefits of that to our patients. And just seconds later, you got the content, and then you can refine it with another prompt. Think of how much easier that is than sometimes having to reach out to someone or deal with the complexities. And really, this is one of those new tools that's now become available. Now, oh, that's fine. But if you really want to focus on demand generation, this next innovation is it is a game changer. So this is we call this I don't know a great way to call it except for EHR Google Ads. And here's how this works, because it combines three really, really, really important components or three really important aspects of overall driving traffic, three sets of information that were not otherwise able to be processed by humans all simultaneously. So just to give you a reminder, Google Ads is the stuff that's up above, it's below the knowledge source, but it's above the snack pack. And the interesting thing here is you've got if you're looking at ads, here's what snack pack ads look like, and here's what Google Ads appear like in the search when you search for eye doctor. Now, the reason I'm talking about this now, and some people who have listened to me on the podcast or have heard my talks in the past, I'm not usually the biggest fan of Google Ads, but for optometry today, specifically independent optometry today, it is definitely one of the best deals on the market. If you look at this, this is what's called cost per acquisition. Cost per acquisition is the only metric that matters. If anybody's running Google Ads out there and their agency is talking with them about clicks and impressions and whatever, I don't care. Please don't care about this at all. The reality is that the only metric that matters is cost per acquisition. And as long as you define acquisition the right way in your setup, it's really, really, really the only thing that truly matters, because that is a patient on your schedule, not some sort of vanity metric. So why is this important now? The cost per acquisition has dropped 52%. I'm not sure if this is tariffs, if this is economic climate, if this is some uncertainty, but if you look at what it was last May, $21.64, which you look at what it was at the end of the third quarter, $10.50, that's a 52% drop. That's a great deal for new patients. So, by the way, $10 for general dry eye care or general eye care, that's not necessarily what it's going to be in New York or LA, but if you take the average across the nation, and we do take the average after spending millions of dollars on Google, we take the average across all of our clients. This is what this looks like right now. So it's a really, really good deal for the optometric space. And by the way, that's general eye care. If you look at dry eye, cost per acquisition in dry eye is now $16.91. So this is the first piece of information, cost per acquisition in your market. The second piece of information that you need to look at is, what is your fill rate on your schedule? How many appointments can you have versus, or you can fit on your schedule, versus how many appointments do you have actually that have already been scheduled to fill? So if you take a look, and let's just combine these two things, I've got this practice at the bottom that has 195 appointments available. So their fill rate is 47%. And for that same exact practice, the cost per acquisition is $7.78 to put a butt in their seat. You think they should spend the money? I mean, pretty obvious, right? But if somebody's cost per acquisition was $50 and they were 95% full, like the practice three up, that probably wouldn't be good dollars to spend. But that's really different than how most people manage Google Ads. Most people manage Google Ads by saying, here's $1,000. Hopefully we spend it this month, and I'm not really sure what I'm going to get. This literally starts getting into the nuance of crunching the numbers on your schedule with the numbers that Google presents. And then you get your third piece of data, which is what's your natural fill rate? Because Google Ads tend to fill your schedule 3 to 6 days out, and 3 to 5 days out in general, but 3 to 6 days out depending on weekends. And what happens is if you're running Google Ads and you know what your schedule looks like, and then you know how your schedule will naturally fill up with a predictive algorithm that is based on AI, then you have an opportunity to combine all this information and to get into a real exchange of dollars per patients. So for example, this AI tool takes into consideration 3 core items. Takes into consideration Google's CPA, so that's the money you pay to Google. Then it takes into consideration your booking rate, which is the number of patients who actually show up in your practice after they make a phone call or after they put their information into your schedule. And it also takes into consideration your future possible fill rate. And then it crunches all those numbers and says, you know what? To get your schedule 90% full, and this is an example of one practice, you're going to have to spend $334, and that's an average of $20.92 cost per conversion. So if you think about the average patient in an average practice being something like, let's call it $400 revenue per patient, would you pay $20.92 to put that $400 guaranteed in your chair? Even if that was $40, even if that was $80, right? You think about that and you would say, and to this AI, you would say, hey, I'm willing to pay $80 as long as I get a 90% fill rate. And then the AI would crunch numbers and say, well, you probably won't even have to spend that much because of the data that we have, but good to know. Thanks. I'll fill your schedule. No problem. Goodbye. So that's one more example. Now, I did talk a little bit about, I played the call for you. I won't make you cringe anymore. I will play you more awful calls that are coming into the offices. And you heard me talk about the number of calls that are being missed during business hours increasing, and the number of patients that are not being booked during business hours increasing as well. So the reality is that I've been talking about a metric that is called the phone capture rate for practices across the country. And it turns out that the average phone capture rate in a practice for new and returning patients after the phone is answered, because I don't know what happens to the calls where the phone is not answered unless they leave a voice message, which is very far and few between now. But after the phone is answered, the average phone capture rate in a practice is 73%. And I would ask you, what's your phone capture rate? But unless you're listening to calls or you have an AI tool that's listening to calls, that phone, you probably don't know. And I propose to you that not knowing does not that not knowing is not serving you very well, and it is costing you money. And I'll give you an example. There's one call center where we monitor very closely, and they have this is literally a screenshot of a report that I was sent a few weeks ago. They have a regular close rate or conversion rate on the phone capture rate of 114%. How do they do that? Everybody's wondering, 114%. That means that for every 100 potential patients who call, they schedule 114 appointments. Well, that's impossible, except they ask that question that the AI was asking in the beginning. Our schedules tend to fill up quickly, Mary, while I have it open. Who else in your practice or who else in your household needs an eye exam? And anywhere between 1 to 3 patients out of every 14 will say, depending on the practice, depending on the demographic, will say, oh yeah, I know somebody. Oh yeah, by the way, I need to make an appointment for so-and-so. And so you get a 2-fer, sometimes a 3-fer out of one request. So here's the deal. How much money is this costing you, or how much money is not knowing your capture rate costing you? Well, if you have just 10 calls a day coming into a practice. That's 200 calls a month, 200 calls a month. And if you have a 70% capture rate or those 200 calls, that's 140 booked. If you have a 109% capture rate, that's 218 appointments booked. So what does that mean? That means 78 additional appointments at an average patient value of $400. 78 times $400 is $31,000 per month that a low phone capture or an average, not even a low phone capture rate, low phone capture rate's under 50%. An average phone capture rate is costing you $31,000 per month with just a practice that gets only 10 calls per day. So there's two ways that you can get AI to increase your phone capture rate. One of them is to have AI answer the phone 24/7. And why wasn't this possible a year ago? Well, there's a few reasons. Number one, the latency, the weird pause like that AI does. That weird pause was just too long. Then there was not any companies that had integrations with eye care EHRs. And also the AI there was not enough AI that was trained by really good call centers. And of course, the last part is AI didn't have a great way to have a human ripcord. So if a human gets frustrated and says, operator, whatever, some sort of cranky human who doesn't want to talk to the AI, no problem. Just need a human ripcord. So these four features are now new, and which is now making this technology possible in the eye care space. So I propose to you that you cannot afford to not know your phone capture rate. And the reality is that you've got two choices. You can answer the phone with AI, and then you'll have 100%, you'll have a 0% missed call rate, and then you'll have a better phone capture rate potentially, but you'll know exactly what it is. And then you can also monitor all of the calls that come in with AI, because previously it's impossible for a human who's busy, especially when you have staffing problems already. It's impossible for a human to spend the time to listen to all the calls that are coming in to your practice. So here's the deal. You've got a tool that can listen to calls, that literally listen to all the calls that are coming into a practice, give you an idea of how many missed calls you have, tell you when your missed calls are happening, tell you what your appointment opportunities are looking like, and when your heat map looks like, when your phones are really heating up, the big green buttons, tell you how much you're missing, what your phone capture rate is every single day. And then you've got and then all the keywords that are being mentioned for appointments not booked and the appointments booked. And they even give you calls that are coaching opportunities. And you can highlight some of the things that are really not going well. But I want you to understand that you can use AI right now to fix your phone capture rate. And fixing your phone capture rate stops setting money on fire on the phones. And that's just one more tool and idea I wanted to share with you today. So this is just one example, and I talked about pre-visit AI. This is, if you want to take a screenshot or a picture of the slide, but this is stuff that's available now or available soon, and you have opportunities to use it to drive more patients, more revenue, and better quality into your office. Now, I'm going to talk just about a couple more things here quickly to help just give you a little bit more variety. So, for example, you think about what happens after the patient visit. You think about what's going on right now. There's a lot of data that's come out of the Vision Council that shows that our exam-only rate across the country is 53%. It means that more than half of patients are walking out of the door. Now, your capture rate might be a little different, but the exam-only rate, and I've talked about this on the show as well, the exam-only rate, which is defined as any instance where a patient had a refraction, didn't buy something that day, on that same day, the best in class for practices is under 20%. The current status, not really that great, and it continues to climb. So what can you do about it? Well, certainly not that, because if a patient walks out of most practices today without buying anything, the next time they're going to hear from you is a year from now with one of these messages. So imagine if there was a tool that helped with possible exam-only patients. How would it work? Well, it would use the information that you've captured right in the office And it would say something like, okay, I have your picture, I have your information. And then all of a sudden there's some personal communication. Hey, Jen, I think we'll love these frames. And or if you've got a treatment plan that you recommended that somebody didn't accept, so they're an exam only for dry eye, myopia, sclerals, whatever, all of a sudden you've got a follow-up plan that follows that exam only patient. And while I'm here, I'm going to talk for 2 minutes about the right way to reactivate a patient and what AI and what technology now makes possible. The reality is that most practices are still doing this, which is sending patients messages that sound generic, and that whether it's sent by text or email, it happens maybe at 13 months, maybe at 15 months, 17, 22, whatever. But these software don't necessarily want to send the same message over and over and over again and do it too frequently, because unfortunately, that will mean that those patients are likely to unsubscribe, because if you've ever been subscribed to something like a Macy's email list or JCPenney's email list, and they're like having like 4 sales a day and they send you 4 emails a day, you're probably, unless you're really enjoying that content, you're probably going to cry uncle at some point and unsubscribe. And that's exactly why these pieces of technology don't communicate that frequently with patients who have missed their eye exam. Now, we tried something very different, and we said, hey, we're going to run an experiment. Now, this experiment had over 1 million digital touches in that. And what we tried is to say, hey, we're going to try to reach out to patients 13 to 60 months. That is up to 5 years since their last eye exam. And what we learned was that up to 21% of those patients, actually just over 21% of those patients, can be reactivated, but with a very different technique, a strategic reactivation technique. The way you do that is, and by the way, we found that it takes 4 to 7 months of consistent communication in order to make this happen, but it has to be very different. You don't just send, hey, Jen, you're overdue for an eye exam. Hey, Jen, you're overdue for an eye exam. Hey, Jen, still overdue for an eye exam. Because all you're doing is reinforcing the decision that they made. And imagine if you got that text every month for the last 5 years. Of course, you're going to unsubscribe. So instead, you're going to have content that is relationship building content that establishes you as an expert. And the content looks something like this: glasses for every face shape. What's the best diet for your eyes? Book your eye exam in 60 seconds, right? All of these have a variety of different approaches. But what we learned was that you can get as much as $6.21 return on investment for every marketing communication. I'm going to ask you, what's the cost to send an email? And if you thought zero, you're pretty close to right. An incremental email is very close to zero. The most expensive marketing communication we sent out was an MMS. An MMS is like an SMS, but it's got a picture, possibly. We tested pictures of doctors, tested pictures of businesses, and tested logos. And what we learned was that at our average revenue ROI dollars for those MMSs, which cost us, oh man, a whole 6 cents to send. 6 cents traded for $6.21. This is a little bit of a better deal than the previous deal that I offered you, which is $20 traded for 400. But still, these are great ROI positive opportunities available to practices today. I'm going to cover 2 more AI innovations that I think are really important for practices to know. One of them is just the patient satisfaction component. All of you have, if you have a Google business profile, you have reviews. If you're getting new reviews, you might be looking at them on a regular basis, but are you doing a trend analysis? This is a simple prompt inside of Google Gemini. And what you have to do is you just have to realize, I'm going to look for, first I'm going to do a basic analysis and try to understand what the feedback is really saying. Then you can do the same analysis on your competitors, and then you can compare, say, what are my competitors' reviews saying versus mine, and how am I better? How am I worse? What can I learn from them? And you can also do this you can do this every few months. You can have a couple different trends. You can look at all the different trends that happen. So if I analyzed my reviews this month versus 3 months ago, what happened? How did my practice change? Who specifically has been mentioned? And by the way, AI should be responding to your reviews as well, because if it's not, you could be, unless you're a really crafty writer, you could be risking a HIPAA violation if any of your review responses acknowledge that a patient had been in your office. Even if you say, "Thank you, Michael, it was great to see you," or "Thank you, Michael, we're glad we could help you." All of those things, unfortunately, lead to, in today's environment, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not offering legal advice, but what I've learned by spending a lot of money with the top HIPAA lawyer in the country, is that we got to be really careful with how we answer reviews. So this is another example of some AI tools that are now available. So I'm going to pause here, Jen, and I think we're going to probably ask folks if they have any questions. I could probably, if I don't have a lot of questions, I could probably share one more AI tool if you want, but let me just get some feedback from the audience.
I think we want to hear one more AI tool.
Okay. All right, let's do it.
Let's go for it.
And then I'll give everybody a quick gift. All right, so AI tool, let's see if we go here. So here's the thing. What happens after practice? What happens with today's practices is that we have these EHRs that produce massive amounts of information. So this thing right here is actually the structure of all of the tables inside of one of the very popular EHRs that many of you are probably using today. And each one of those little dots on the screen is a table that gathers information. It could be, contact lens styles that are offered in your office. It could be the patient purchase history. It could be a clinical piece of data. And all of these tables work together. And sometimes there are tools that exist, and many of you have probably seen these, are tools that are just dashboards that read some information back to you. And if you're a data-loving data analyst, which I found that about 10% of optometrists are, you love this data and you run with it and you use it and you try to trend analyze it. But what if there was a better way? What if AI could analyze all of the data that's gathered by your EHR and give you a readout to say, hey, you know what you should, I don't know exactly what you want to focus on, but let me tell you if the juice is worth the squeeze. So for example, if you wanted to focus on your exam only rate in your practice and you could reduce it by 6%, that would give you an extra $219 next month or next year. Or if you wanted to focus on your fundus photo capture rate and you wanted to increase that by 23%, that would give you an extra $32,000. And you might think, well, exam only is really hard to manage in my office, but fundus photo, we could just train the techs a little bit and we could get a little bit better at that. So this is an AI analysis that says how much money are you leaving on the table and how much more opportunity is there inside your practice? And of course, I learned this a long time ago from somebody who ran a very, very successful practice, is that you don't monitor or you don't manage the metrics, you manage the behaviors that lead to the metrics. And so what if the AI tool allowed you to pick your specific thing that you really want to care about? So let's say it's that exam only rate, and say, okay, I'm going to focus on a 3-month goal. So we're going to have a ROC, as we call them in our organization, ROC or a goal for the next 3 months to focus on this. And every single day, the AI could look and say, hey, this is what our the tool could look and say, this is what our exam only needs to be from, or in this particular case, I guess it's a fundus photo in my example. This is what our fundus photo, we're trying to go from 52% to 80% over here. This is what our trend line looks like. This is this location. This is this doctor. And by the way, here's some AI insights about how you did and what you can do better. And here's some strategic insights. Here's some suggestions about how to potentially do that. And you didn't even have to open the dashboard. That was just sent to you every morning, or maybe one day you can just talk to this tool and get your information right now. So what I'll do is I'll provide everybody with some homework, and I'm going to throw the, I think I can put this in the chat. So let me make sure this is the right link, because a lot of people are wondering, hey, what can I do with all this information? I threw a ton of information with you. I threw a ton of information at you. Yeah, you can download this checklist. So this is a checklist that we created that said, this is you write down, because the way you get started is you write down your top practice pain point, right? You literally just jot down your top practice pain point, and then you basically say, hey, here we go. You start small and you basically say, what's my top practice pain point? You say, who is going to work on it? And then you choose the solution. So we've got this checklist for you. And again, I'm going to throw the URL into the chat right now for everybody if you want to download it. But what you'll do when you download this thing, you can either scan it or click on the link to download, and you get to describe what your pain point is. It's a fillable PDF. You'll get an email with a fillable PDF once you request it. That fillable PDF will allow you to put your pain points in, pick the tools that you want to use, pick the numbers that you want to measure, and then you'll identify for yourself as a worksheet who it is in your practice that you're going to ask to be accountable, because AI adoption doesn't require like overall overhaul of your practice. You start small, you pick a problem, you involve your team, you talk to your team about what that problem is, then you start thinking about what solutions you might want to experiment with. And then you set a baseline, you measure the results, and then once something's working, you add another tool.